Number 5. Jean-Paul Gaultier. Jean-Paul Gaultier is the hinge point of this list. The first brand where the exchange is roughly honest. Le Mail, launched in 1995, was genuinely radical for its moment, and the current Le Mail Le Parfum, the concentrated 2020 version, does something a good concentrated release should do. It does not just amplify the original, it reveals the depth the formula always had. Lavender, tonka bean, and amber at a tenacity the EDT could never sustain, at around $65. The community discussion around Le Mail Le Parfum has a specific character. Serious collectors who own Amouage and Parfums de Marly alongside their designer purchases recommend it not as a budget alternative, but as something worth owning on its own terms. To be fair, not everything in the Gaultier catalog holds this standard. Some of the flanker releases built off Le Mail's name are the kind of line extensions that exist to occupy shelf space rather than to say anything new. But the flagship is genuinely one of the best performing masculines under $100, with the community documenting 12 to 16 hours on skin. 5 is the rank for a brand that gives you roughly what you pay for at its best and does not actively punish you at its worst. From here, the latter starts paying you back. Number 4. Paco Rabanne. Paco Rabanne is the first brand on this climb that consistently over-delivers relative to its price, and the irony is that the formula doing the heaviest lifting is 50 years old. The original Paco Rabanne Pour Homme, launched in 1973, is a classical aromatic fougere, lavender, rosemary, thyme, oak moss, vetiver, built when that tradition meant something rigorous, and it currently retails for around $30 because the brand's own commercial success with 1 million has made the original invisible to most buyers. Meanwhile, 1 million itself, despite community debate about post-2018 reformulation softening the leather and longevity slightly, remains one of the most effective complement-generating formulas in mainstream masculine fragrance at any price. To be fair, Paco Rabanne's modern flagship releases are unapologetically commercial. They are built for maximum projection and broad appeal rather than for subtlety, and that is a legitimate criticism if subtlety is what you are looking for. The post-2018 reformulation conversations around 1 million are real and documented. Some collectors do report the current leather and amber base as softer than older batches. But even accounting for that softening, the formula remains one of the most effective complement generators in the entire mainstream masculine category at any price, which means even the diluted version of Paco Rabanne's biggest hit still outperforms fragrances costing 2 and 3 times more. Measured purely on performance per dollar, this is a house that puts real oil concentration into bottles priced for mass accessibility on both ends of its catalog. A 50-year-old formula at $30 sitting on the same shelf as a current bestseller that still outperforms fragrances at triple its price. That combination is why Paco Rabanne earns the number 4 position. You are getting more fragrance, measured in hours on skin and in the materials that produce them, than the price tag on either bottle admits. Subscribe if this framework for thinking about where your money actually goes is useful. I cover fragrance every week at this level of detail. 3 brands left, and this is where the list stops being about designer names entirely. Number 3. Maison Margiela. Replica. Maison Margiela occupies a position none of the other 9 brands on this list share. It is the only one positioned, marketed, and priced as a genuine niche house, while actually being owned by OTB Group, the same conglomerate structure as everything else on this list, just wearing a different face. And yet, unlike Calvin Klein or Versace, where ownership thins the formula relative to the name, Margiela's Replica line is the rare case where the niche positioning is largely earned. Jazz Club, rum, tobacco, vetiver, pink pepper, vanilla, retails around $65 and delivers something that genuinely smells like the specific thing its name promises, which is a rarer achievement than it sounds. The Replica line's entire premise is unusual for a mainstream distributed brand. Each fragrance is built around a specific memory rather than a demographic. That brief produces formulas with a level of conceptual specificity that houses charging 2 and 3 times as much rarely attempt, because most designer briefs are written to appeal to as many people as possible, and specificity is the opposite of broad appeal. The community rating on Jazz Club is among the highest for any mainstream niche release under $100, with tens of thousands of reviews consistently praising longevity, projection, and the specific quality of making a room smell like somewhere worth being. To be fair, $65 is not the floor of this list, and Margiela does not pretend otherwise. This is the most expensive brand in the top half of this ranking. But the comparison that matters is not against Lattafa at $25. It is against what a formula with this level of conceptual ambition and this level of community praise would cost from a house without OTB's distribution infrastructure behind it. And that number is consistently 2 to 3 times higher. 3 is the rank for the one brand on this list that is marketed as niche, owned like everything else, and actually delivers on the niche promise anyway. Number 2. Lattafa. Here is the spec shock that earns the silver medal. Lattafa is a UAE-based house that has built its entire business on a premise that should not work as well as it does. Take genuine aromatic materials, real oud, real amber, real musks, and price the finished fragrance at $25 to $40 by stripping out everything that is not the formula. No celebrity campaigns, no flagship retail, no magazine placements. The community's blind comparisons between Lattafa releases and designer fragrances costing 5 to 10 times more are now a recurring genre of their own, and the verdict is consistent. The materials are real, the concentration is generous, and the performance regularly matches or exceeds what the famous names deliver. The reason this works is scale combined with an absence of the costs that inflate every other brand on this list. Lattafa is not pretending to be a heritage house or a status symbol. There is no founding date being marketed, no boutique experience being sold, no celebrity holding a bottle in a magazine. It does not need the story because the formula does not need the story to perform. That absence of overhead is not a workaround. It is the entire business model, applied consistently across a catalog large enough that the economics of scale do something almost no Western house at any price can replicate. Real concentration, real materials, at a price point that should not be mathematically possible if you assume the Western pricing model is the only honest one. Put it side by side with the floor of this list. Lattafa Camera is $25. Creed Aventus is $435. Neither is a perfect fragrance. Camera will not be mistaken for haute perfumery by anyone paying close attention. And Aventus, when the batch is right, has genuine sophistication Camera does not attempt. But one of them gives you considerably more certainty about what you are getting for what you paid. And the gap between 17 times the price and roughly comparable real-world performance is the single largest value distortion this entire ranking has uncovered. 2 is the rank for a brand that figured out the entire game this list has been describing and simply declined to play the parts of it that cost you money without improving the bottle. Number 1. Zara. Here is the payoff this whole ranking has been climbing toward. The brand most of you have walked past on the way to the clothing racks is, by the measure this entire video has been using, the best value in fragrance. Zara's fragrance line is produced in partnership with major fragrance houses. The same companies, in some cases the same noses, that develop formulas for the brands sitting at the top of department store counters. Zara fragrances regularly retail between $13 and $30, and the community has spent years documenting specific releases that smell remarkably close to niche and designer references costing 10 to 20 times more, built using comparable accord structures from the same supplier ecosystem. I will be precise, because precision is the entire point of this list. A Zara fragrance does not carry the dry-down complexity of a true niche masterpiece, and the bottles are exactly what they look like. Mall packaging, no ceremony, no story on the box beyond a name and a short list of notes. But the formula inside is not a cheap approximation thrown together by a budget operation chasing margin. It is built using the same raw material supply chains and the same fragrance house expertise that the luxury market pays a substantial premium to access. Without the boutique lease, without the campaign budget, without the celebrity contract, without the name that lets a brand charge 4 times as much for materials that cost the same to source. The man who reads what is actually in the bottle, rather than what is printed on it, can walk out of a mall with something that performs in the same conversation as fragrances costing $200 more. Not identical, not a replacement for the genuine niche experience at the top of this list, but genuinely competitive on the only metric this entire ranking has been using. What does your money actually buy? The name is never the formula. Zara is the proof, sitting at the exact opposite end of this list from where the video started. In a mall, most of you have walked through dozens of times without ever checking what was on that shelf. So here is the whole thing in one breath. Read the concentration. Read the longevity the community actually documents. Read the price against what is genuinely in the bottle, and the name has nothing to do with any of it. Do that, and you can climb this ladder yourself every time you shop. The Creed buyer and the Zara buyer can stand in the same room wearing something that performs almost identically. One spent $400, the other spent 20. The only difference between them is the name on the bottle, and the name was never the formula. All 10 brands discussed in this video are tagged with the best current options I could find. And drop in the comments which brand on this list surprised you most, because that conversation is always more interesting than the ranking itself.